Have you ever felt like the deeper you think, the more alone you feel? Like the more clearly you understand things, the less people want to hear what you have to say? If so, you're not imagining it. This is something that's been happening for centuries. Society has always been uncomfortable around deep thinkers, not because they're wrong, but because they see things most people would rather ignore. It's written all over history. Think about Socrates, Nietzsche, Galileo, Tesla, some of the greatest minds humanity's ever known. And yet, they were laughed at, silenced, or cast aside. Not because they lacked brilliance, but because they made people uncomfortable. Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers, believed that intelligence itself is a kind of curse. The clearer your view of the world, the more alone you become. But why? Why does society push away those who think differently? To understand that, you've got to look into the way our minds work. Here's something interesting. When you're next to someone who's physically strong, you might admire them. You might even feel inspired. When you meet someone rich, maybe you feel a little jealous, but you don't feel threatened. But with intelligence, it's different. When you meet someone who sees the world on a deeper level, it can feel unsettling. Psychologists call this the mirror effect. A deep thinker doesn't just bring new ideas into the room, they reflect back the limitations of those around them, and people don't forgive that easily. Just being in the presence of someone who's mentally sharp can make others feel exposed, even if that person says absolutely nothing. Why does intelligence provoke more discomfort than any other kind of superiority? Well, physical strength, wealth, or beauty, those things are external. You can admire them from a distance. They don't necessarily challenge your sense of self, but intelligence? That hits closer to home. It's internal. Our thoughts, our beliefs, those are the foundations of who we think we are. So when someone challenges those things, even indirectly, it feels like a personal attack. That's why many people subconsciously resist intelligence. It's not about arrogance or snobbery. It's just that deep thinkers, by existing, push people to confront things they'd rather avoid. That's also why society tends to isolate them. It's not that these people don't want to connect. It's that others pull away. You might have felt this in your own life. Maybe you brought up a thought-provoking idea in a conversation, and suddenly the room went quiet. Maybe you noticed how people change the subject when things go deeper than surface-level small talk. That's not just random. It's a defense mechanism. When people encounter something that challenges their worldview, their brain goes into self-protection mode. Instead of asking questions, they push back. Instead of getting curious, they get dismissive. That's why you'll find that confidence, especially loud, unshakable confidence, is often more socially valuable than intelligence. People are drawn to certainty. Even if what's being said is shallow or simplistic, if it's delivered with confidence, it spreads. Populist leaders, self-help gurus, influencers, they win hearts not by being right, but by being certain. Meanwhile, deep thinkers who deal in nuance and complexity often struggle to reach a wider audience. This is the paradox. The more someone seeks the truth, the more distant they often become from the majority. The mirror they hold up doesn't just show the flaws in others, it also reflects why change is so hard to achieve. So is there any science to back this up? Yes, and it's pretty fascinating. Neuroscience has shown that when people feel intellectually inferior, the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for detecting threats, lights up. In simple terms, deep thinking doesn't just make people uncomfortable, it actually activates a fear response, similar to the one we'd have if we were in real danger. That might sound dramatic, but it makes sense when you think about how humans evolved. For most of history, being accepted by your group wasn't just about feeling good, it was about staying alive. Tribes offered protection, isolation meant vulnerability. So our brains were wired to prioritize social harmony over intellectual insight. When someone intelligent walks into a room and starts introducing ideas that challenge the norm, they disrupt that social balance. It doesn't matter if they're polite or kind, it still triggers people's threat detection systems. In many cases, they're seen not as interesting, but as dangerous. That's why intelligent people often feel like outsiders. Not because they're antisocial, but because the social fabric itself isn't designed to welcome them. A 2021 Stanford study dug even deeper into this. It found that deep thinkers are often more accepted in one-on-one conversations than in group settings. Why? Because in groups, people become hyper-aware of how others perceive them. If someone feels intellectually outmatched in a group, they're more likely to feel threatened and more likely to lash out or shut down. It's not about intelligence itself, it's about what intelligence represents in a social setting, a challenge to the group's equilibrium. And that's not the only factor at play. There are a few cognitive biases that explain why smart people are so often met with resistance. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a big one. People with low ability tend to overestimate how much they know, while those who are genuinely intelligent often question themselves. That imbalance creates tension. Those who know the least are often the loudest, while deep thinkers are more cautious with their words. Then there's status quo bias. The brain prefers ideas that feel safe and familiar, so when a thinker introduces something new or complex, people instinctively resist it, even if it's true. And of course, there's the backfire effect. This is when people are presented with evidence that contradicts their beliefs, and instead of reconsidering, they double down on what they already think. Deep thinkers deal with this constantly. They're not just trying to explain new ideas, they're fighting against an emotional defense system. Now throw social media into the mix, and things get even harder for intellectuals. Online, the algorithm doesn't care about truth or insight, it cares about engagement, and the stuff that engages people the fastest? Outrage, humor, simplistic takes. Viral content isn't about what's true, it's about what spreads. Deep thoughts take time. But time is something the digital world doesn't like to give. That's why you rarely see nuanced discussions going viral. Instead, the internet favors quick, catchy, often misleading sound bites. Intellectual content gets buried beneath waves of controversy and clickbait. And for deep thinkers, that means an even steeper uphill battle, not just socially, but culturally and technologically. The foundation of progress, shaping the very society that once rejected them. And this isn't just some tragic irony, it's a cycle where new ideas threaten the comfort of the collective, and the messenger pays the price. But here's the twist. While society may push away the deep thinker, it's also utterly dependent on them. Every leap forward, scientific, philosophical, technological, has come from someone who thought differently, someone who questioned what others took for granted. Without these minds, we would still be living in the dark, both literally and figuratively. Yet, even knowing this, the world still treats deep thinkers like strangers in their own time. So what does that mean for those who see the world differently today? If you're someone who's ever felt out of place for thinking deeply, you're not just imagining things, you're feeling the weight of history pressing down on you. And that brings us to a difficult truth. Being a deep thinker often means learning how to live in two worlds. One world is the internal, rich, curious, constantly questioning. It's where ideas are born, where meaning is created. But the other world, the external, is built on conformity, simplicity, and repetition. Learning to navigate both is the survival skill every deep thinker eventually has to master. It's not about dumbing yourself down or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about being strategic, sharing your depth with the right people in the right context. Because while society may not always embrace intelligence, that doesn't mean you have to walk alone. There are more of us out there than it seems. In private conversations, in late-night journals, in niche communities online, you'll find others who ask the same questions, who wrestle with the same existential weight. And when deep thinkers find each other, something amazing happens. They build alternative spaces, places where thought isn't punished but celebrated. That's how movements begin. That's how real change starts. Not with the crowd, but with the quiet ones who dare to see the world as it is and imagine something better. But there's another layer to all this, a hidden cost that deep thinkers carry. Because seeing too much can sometimes feel like seeing too little that's worth holding on to. When you understand the flaws in human behavior, the cracks in systems, the illusions people cling to, it can be hard to stay optimistic. It can even lead to despair. That's why many great minds have struggled with mental health. Not because they were broken, but because they were burdened by the weight of insight. The philosopher Kierkegaard called it the dizziness of freedom, the overwhelming sense that comes with seeing all the possibilities, all the truths, and realizing how alone you are in that awareness. But this burden isn't a death sentence, it's a calling, a challenge. The question isn't whether deep thinking isolates you, it's whether you can turn that isolation into power. Think of it this way: if society runs on autopilot, deep thinkers are the ones who grab the wheel. And that's not easy. It's lonely, it's tiring, but it's also necessary, because every time a deep thinker speaks up, writes, creates, teaches, they plant a seed. Maybe the world isn't ready for that seed yet. Maybe it laughs or scoffs or ignores, but give it time. Those seeds grow. And here's where it gets practical. If you're someone who thinks deeply, here are some tools to help you survive and thrive in a world that might not always value what you bring. First, protect your mental energy. Not every argument is worth having. Not every person is worth convincing. Choose your battles. Save your insight for where it can be heard, or where it can at least take root. Second, find your niche. Whether it's online communities, discussion groups, creative outlets, build spaces where depth is welcome. Don't waste your brilliance trying to fit into places that only value surface-level thinking. Third, learn how to communicate complexity simply. It's not about watering down your ideas. It's about meeting people where they are and guiding them forward. A good deep thinker isn't just smart. They're also a bridge builder. They make complicated things digestible without losing the essence. Fourth, embrace solitude, but don't isolate. Solitude gives your mind space to breathe, but we all need connection. Find people who get it, even if it's just a few. Quality over quantity matters here. And finally, recognize your value, even when the world doesn't. History proves it. Society is slow to catch up, but it always does. The voices that echo through time are rarely the loudest in their own era. They're the ones who had the courage to speak even when no one was listening. Now, let's zoom out again. Let's look at the bigger picture. Why does this cycle of resistance and rejection keep happening? Why does society fear intelligence but rely on it at the same time? Because intelligence, real intelligence, forces evolution. It challenges comfort zones, it threatens control, and every system, social, political, religious, is built to protect itself. Deep thinkers destabilize those systems simply by asking, why? That one question has toppled empires, rewritten laws, and sparked revolutions, and that's why it's so dangerous. So when you feel alone in your thinking, remember, you're not just thinking, you're disrupting, you're evolving, you're doing what few dare to do. Question reality instead of just accepting it. And sure, that path is hard, but it's also noble. Because while the world might not understand you now, it might be standing on your shoulders one day, just like it did with Socrates, with Galileo, with Tesla, with Turing. You don't need the world's approval to make an impact. You just need to stay true to your lens. Because that lens, it sees what others can't. And that vision, however isolating, is what lights the path forward. So where does all of this leave us? If you're still listening, it means you're probably one of the few, one of the rare people who sees the world in layers, who finds meaning in the quiet spaces between things. And maybe you've carried that weight silently, thinking you were the only one who noticed just how strange, how repetitive, how artificially simple the world can be. But you're not alone. You're part of a long, quiet lineage. The thinkers, the observers, the ones who never quite fit in because they saw too much. You're not broken. You're just tuned to a frequency most people don't even know exists. And here's the most important part. you're needed. In a world drowning in noise, your silence is power. In a culture addicted to speed, your slowness, your reflection, is a kind of rebellion. When everyone else is chasing trends, you're studying patterns. When others react, you pause. You consider. You ask why. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. But wisdom isn't flashy. It doesn't go viral. It doesn't trend. It whispers. It waits. It builds slowly, behind the scenes, until one day it becomes the foundation for something new. And that's what this is really about. The slow revolution. The one that doesn't happen in headlines or hashtags, but in quiet choices. In the courage to stay curious. In the refusal to be hypnotized by the surface. In the quiet, stubborn act of continuing to think deeply in a world that tells you not to. You won't always get applause for it. You might not get validation, but if you stay the course, something better happens. You become free. Free from needing the crowd's approval, free from bending yourself to fit into a box that was never meant for you, free to see things clearly and to create something that reflects that clarity. And that's the other gift deep thinkers give the world: creation. Whether it's through writing, art, music, invention, philosophy, whatever your medium is, you have the ability to take what's inside and make it real, to give shape to thoughts others can't even name yet. You're not just a critic of the world, you're a builder of what could be, and that's where the legacy of the deep thinker truly lives. Not in the applause of their time, but in the echoes that ripple through generations after. Think about it. Most of the voices we revere now, they were ignored, ridiculed, or punished in their own lifetime. But their ideas outlived them. Their thoughts planted seeds in the minds of those who came after, and those seeds grew into forests. You have that same power, but power requires discipline. It requires patience. And most of all, it requires that you keep going, even when it feels like no one understands. Because someone will. Maybe not today, maybe not even in your lifetime, but someone will read your words, hear your message, discover your work, and something inside them will click. They'll feel seen, and in that moment, your loneliness becomes their connection. Your struggle becomes their strength. That's how this all works, quietly, slowly, but inevitably. So if the world doesn't seem to get you, good. That means you're probably right where you need to be. Because this world, it doesn't need more noise. It doesn't need more of the same. It needs more of you, more thinkers, more seekers, more question askers, more people willing to sit in the uncomfortable space between not knowing and wanting to know. And the more you embrace that role, the more powerful you become. Not in the loud, performative sense, but in the real way, the enduring way. The world might not say it out loud, but deep thinkers are its immune system. The ones who notice the dysfunction, who question the defaults, who refuse to normalize the abnormal, who dream of something more and then quietly go about building it. You may never be the loudest, but you might just be the reason someone else wakes up, thinks deeper, tries harder, questions more. So don't hide your mind. Don't shrink yourself. Don't trade insight for acceptance, because the world will catch up. It always does. Slowly, grudgingly, but it does. And when it does, it'll look back at the thinkers, the misfits, the introverts, the philosophers, the creators, and realize they were the compass all along. So here's to you, to your mind, your solitude, your questions, your quiet courage. Keep thinking, keep going. The world may not understand now, but one day it will, and when it does, it'll realize you were never behind, you were ahead. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel. Until next time, here's to you. You are worthy, you are rare, and you matter.